Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by Arwin, who's not going to know I've actually admitted him, but Arwin, 10th Man, Chocolate Saiyan, Flatsoid, Neil, Paul, and Sleeping Warrior in Discord, together with a whole bunch of people in G+, or the other way around, as the case may be. Welcome, one and all.
Hey, good morning.
Shalom.
Good morning. Good morning. Any evidence of a physical... Who's making that background noise? That's Arwin, isn't it? Or 10th. It's Arwin. God damn you. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge, horizon formerly known as Earth curvature?
Not from Washoe Lake State Park.
No, not even the board.
I don't understand why you would even ask such a thing. Nobody claims the horizon is the curve of the Earth.
Yeah, they don't even claim it's physical.
What about the Earth curve maths that has it marked as a horizon at the tangent point Earth curve physical obstruction? That's not claiming it, no?
No, don't bring that up. Shh.
You mean the meth that was destroyed by its own geometry?
It's just optical, right?
Yeah. You can't measure optical and claim it physical. Even the ballers say that.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect to see geometry. The geometric horizon only exists in Earth curve maths. Why would you expect the horizon to be an Earth curve when no one's claiming the horizon is Earth curve? Right, ballers? These are all quotes from ballers, by the way. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
I do have some evidence that completely refutes it.
Feel free.
I'm going to have to screen share though, Nathan. I'm sorry. Can you present me if I screen share?
Sure, that's not too difficult. Go ahead.
Where's the screen share button?
Down at the bottom.
Where the hell's it?
Present.
Is that it? And present your screen, okay.
While you're doing that, shout out to
share
James Richards, who says, like the entire heliocentric religion, Earth curve is only in your imagination. Thank you very much.
Right, so I want to have a conversation with Flatsoid if I can. Flatsoid, are you there?
Yes, mister.
So I've been watching your discussion recently with regards to the Ethos. Say again? I've been watching your... No, I thought someone spoke over it. It's okay. I've been watching your progression with your conversation with regards to the Ethos effect and the claims that it proves that the Earth's turning, right? I want to present to you some opposing evidence that shows that the Earth is not turning, because if the Earth actually was turning, and if you start like, if you're driving a boat or you're captaining a ship, and you set off from the UK, which we'll call North Atlantic, winter North Atlantic, you can only load your boat up to the line that is presented on screen because of the density of the water. And if you go beyond the density of the water line, by the time you get to your tropical your destination in the Caribbean somewhere, when you get into your summer tropical waters, it looks like your boat sinks, right? Because the water level rises further up, and that's because the density of the water around the boat is changing, and the boat is therefore displacing more. But the Ethos effect claims that as you get closer towards the equator, that the boat essentially gets lighter in the water because it's being centrifugally flung around the ball as it's rotating. Well, if that was true, this scale would be inverted, because you would be able to set off from England with your heavily laden boat full of tea, if you want for a better stereotype, heading off to the Caribbean. And when you got to the Caribbean, because of centrifugal force, it would appear that the boat has risen out of the water because the water level has dropped. But in real world, it's the opposite way around. Now, I'm not asserting that there's a force of attraction pulling you towards the center of the Earth as a function of getting towards the equator. But I am asserting that the water changes its relative density to the boat as a function of temperature and salinity, and we see that with proof with the plimsoll line. So with regards to the claim that there is an axial rotation, if there was, you would expect the Eötvös effect to make this scale to be the opposite way round, because as you're traversing from the winter North Atlantic down to the summer tropicals, you would expect the scale to be inverted, and it's clearly not that way. So this kind of disproves the idea that the Earth's rotating, because this scale would have to be the opposite way around. So shout out to Samuel Plimsoll, the English engineer that built ships that were sinking, for working out that it was relative density that kept these boats afloat and had nothing to do with the Eötvös effect. It's just a story that exists in their model because it's necessary. But in the real world, we can see that it doesn't exist, because if it did, this scale would be the opposite way around, and it's not. So shout out to Samuel Plimsoll. Flatzoid, what do you think?
Yeah, first off, I never claimed it does have Earth spin. I'm claiming you can't claim Eötvös effect or Coriolis if you're claiming conservation of momentum. Because if you claim conservation of momentum, you cannot have Eötvös effect, because then you're not going to have centrifugal forces pulling you opposite way to change your weight.
What do you think of my claim that the scale on the Plimsoll line would be inverted if we were sending ships from the winter North Atlantic down to the Caribbean to sell off our tea? You would expect the boat to be centrifugally flung out of the water to some degree, and essentially the water level would drop because you're getting towards the equator. But in the real world, it's the opposite way around. Would you agree with that, or would you say that it's correlative only?
No, I agree, because it's demonstrated and proven that happens.
So let the Baltards explain why the Plimsoll line refutes the claim of the Eötvös effect, because it does. Sorry, guys.
Can you turn your mic down 5 dB?
Yeah.
Thank you. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
No, but can I ask Anthony a question?
Yeah, sure.
So what you're saying, you're citing a historical event of boats leaving England and sinking as they got to different waters that had different salinity and temperature, right?
But believe it or not, 10th, it's a naturally occurring phenomenon that for some reason boats that were being built in Britain were only getting so far, and then they all appeared to be sinking when they were heavily freighted. And it's interesting that, because it's like, what's going on? Something's weird naturally occurring as well. Boats were sinking all in the same area. It's like, were us Brits getting it wrong, building bad ships, or was something else going on?
Well, we know that the sun never set on the English Empire at one time, so they would be they would be building a lot of boats and going to a lot of different oceans. So based on that, the boats they were building were having these effects happen to them when they hit different waters with temperature and salinity differences. Is that what you're stating?
Sure. So as the temperature increases, that means the volume of the water also increases, and therefore the relative density of the water around the boat changes. So it gets basically less dense, but the mass of the boat is still the same. So relatively speaking, because relative density is the thing, the boat appears to be lower in the water, and it looks like it's been taking on water because it appears to be sinking. It's not actually sinking though, is it? It's the water around it that's getting less dense because of the temperature.
Right. So once they had enough ships that sunk, they said something's going on here, and this Mr. Plimsoll guy figured it out, right?
Yeah.
And then they made the changes, and then the ships are no longer sinking, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, it's pretty obvious. Thank you. Very good.
But it refutes the claim that the Eötvös effect is a thing, because if it was the Eötvös effect and it was an actually observed phenomena, the Plimsoll line reference, the gauge on the side of the boats would be inverted, but it's not.
Explain the Eötvös effect for me, who doesn't fully understand it.
They have to prove Earth spinning first, though, before they even claim the Eötvös effect is a side effect of that. But anyway.
The claim is as you get closer to the equator, whether you're traveling north or south, as you get closer to the equator, your vehicle or your thing gets lighter. Now, that works for boats as well, because boats should be appearing to get lighter as they're in water, but they don't, and we can test it, and we can observe it, and we can verify
does that
it.
go for the water that it's in as well?
Say again?
Is the
Things
water
just
that
get
it's in
warmer as they
becoming
get closer
lighter
to
as
the
well?
equator.
Darwin, someone's trying to respond. Hold on. Go ahead, Rams.
Is the water that the boat is traveling in less affected by gravity as well? Or is it affected by these centrifugal forces somehow as well?
We know
the actual water.
We know that water can't be affected by gravity because gravity itself is an effect. It's not a cause. So by definition, applying Einstein's theory, the current position in physics, we know that gravity can't be affecting the water around the boat because it's not a cause.
Owen, did you want to add something?
Oh, that pregnant pause was beautiful. Why did you do that?
Did you want to add something, Arwin?
Sure. I just wanted to say that the Atlas effect is kind of like completely useless because it's claims about how the Earth is spinning and having these side effects when they can't actually prove that Earth is spinning, because then there would be deviation, because air is not susceptible by momentum. It could never move in lockstep with, so we would see all these side effects, and therefore the claim of a side effect of the Earth spinning is kind of useless because there's no proof the Earth is spinning in the first place.
So are you saying the Atlas effect spokespersons are saying there's a 15-degree deviation?
No, I think he's saying you'd first need to prove that there was spin, and their claim proof of spin is deviation. So first prove deviation before you start talking about side effects of the spin that we don't see any effect of. Correct, Darwin?
Correct.
Moving on. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Ha! Reification fallacy.
Well said.
I think we might want to change the question that you asked there, Nathan. Instead of saying any scientific evidence of gravity, just ask for anybody on the ball Earth side even able to define it. Because that seems to be the problem. They don't like citing the Einsteinian current position in physics because it doesn't suit their model. But if they start with a definition, then the rest of their nonsense fails quickly.
James Richards has a question. When measuring a steel beam for a skyscraper, do they look to the stars to measure their cut? No, it requires a physical measurement. Thank you for the super chat, James Richards.
Same thing here on the floor. It requires a physical measurement. I don't look up at the ceiling to cut my tile or my carpet or my vinyl.
Yeah, but you often cut wrong, don't you, Neil?
Oh, come on.
I'm just messing with you. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Not yet. Probably never. Because it's against what they're trying to achieve, and that is to reify a tradition of just so storytelling into science and then making people believe that they are right, that science is a tradition of just so stories tied in together with some mathematical consistencies. That's their main priority, to reinforce that concept, not actual science. So yeah, they could, but they probably never will because it's against their interest.
In the chat says, Nathan, what's the black and white symbolism every effing show? I have no idea what you're talking about. Maybe give me more detail. It's not intentional. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
Tornadoes, Nathan, tornadoes.
The different.
What?
Where'd you get the gas pressure from in the first place?
Yeah, tornadoes require gas pressure to exist.
Yeah, to have a differential in the pressure that is pre-existing to create a tornado, you need a container. In other words, you can't have a gas pressure differential without a container either.
Yep. How can you have volume without containment?
But according to people like RC, Meisty, and Brenda. You just need gas to have gas pressure. As long as you
I was
have
just
gas, you have gas pressure.
Got to press
I
on
was just
something.
going to say, you can just draw out a volume and then calculate the volume and then apply the gas laws to it and then say that you've got a pressure.
No.
I heard it was Professor Dave that said that. That's who said it. I'm going to go and find the clip.
Okay, but you
But
can't just draw an imaginary
wouldn't
container and
Sorry,
postulate.
but wouldn't volume dictate you need physical containment?
Yes, exactly. You can't just draw out an arbitrary imaginary line and say, well, the amount of pressure in this, well, what's the pressure? The pressure's the amount it presses. Well, it's not going to press on some imaginary container.
So I was just going to ask, it's got a pressure on something, correct?
Yeah, you can have gas without a container, but you couldn't have gas pressure because it has to press on something.
Just ignore the pressing part of the pressure.
Gas without a container?
No, you can't have
What?
gas pressure without a container.
I thought you said like you can't have gas without a container, but you can't have gas pressure without a container. But I think I heard that wrong, right?
The necessary
Pressure comes-
antecedent for
So
gas.
you could have gas, but you can't have gas pressure without the container.
Yeah,
Well,
but
that's
gas
false.
pressure is what defines gas. If there's
True.
no gas
Yeah.
pressure, there's no gas. Where's the gas? It's all gone.
Exactly.
True.
Gas is equated with pressure. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gas.
Any more on this? The sky's not a vacuum, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, despite this little internal semantical discussion. If the sky was a vacuum, the gas we breathe would fill the space. Paul Hall's presenting. Adam's trying to get in. It's all go. Did you want to present something, Paul? Got it up for
Hey,
you.
Adam.
Hold on a second, Darwin.
Hi guys.
Hey, Adam.
What's up, Dad?
Yeah. I've got to disagree with that one. You've
Feel
still got
free.
the gas, it's just not able to exert any pressure. The pressure is defined by once you contain the gas, and the net effect of containment of gas is to generate pressure within the gas. You not have the gas. You go to imaginary land and you just got one particle, and you've not really got gas, and you've not really got any real pressure, have you? You've got a vacuum. But it's the containment of the gas and the way that containment creates the molecules to behave and rebound that creates the pressure.
But Adam,
But then it's a
if you
hypothetical
got-
situation because you can't have gas pressure without a container because there's no place where there is no containment.
Yeah, but the statement
Hold on.
without
I've
the
got
pressure, you
Flatsoid's
can't
mic
have
wide
gas,
open.
right?
Hello. Hold on. Go ahead, Flatsoid, because you just kept causing everyone to echo.
Sorry.
I'm just saying, if you got a gas molecule, gas is always moving. So you'd have to have containment to have the gas. If it's always moving, it's just going to move away. You won't have it anymore.
Yeah, I think that's his point. Go ahead, Adam.
If it's moving without containment, it won't return a pressure.
So you wouldn't have gas.
Well, you wouldn't have gas pressure.
You wouldn't have the gas either because it'd be moving
Oh, he's
away.
agreeing with me. Oh, that's nice. Oh, thank you, Adam. I just realised what's happening. You're agreeing with me. Excellent.
Yeah.
I think it's a semantic argument, but it is defining what it is. The pressure is derived. You could still have gas. You can't say you can't have gas without the pressure, because you could have just one gas molecule. Now,
But
I
that's
don't
a
know.
statement that could never be proven, though, because there is no way to demonstrate gas pressure without containment, because there is no place where there is no containment that can be
Exactly, you always have
demonstrated.
containment.
Yeah, I think it would be impossible to demonstrate my point. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, you would agree that to have gas, you need a volume, and volume needs containment. So
No, to have gas pressure, you need a volume. To have a
No.
gas, you don't.
Yeah, I
And that's
disagree
the
with you.
difference I'm drawing.
You can't have nothing in the space of nothing. You can't have something in the space of nothing. That contradicts itself.
Okay, just for brevity, the sky is not a vacuum, and the point of this discussion is that there's an assertion that the sky is a vacuum, and that would be an availability of volume for the gas pressure we definitely have, regardless of how we define it, whether or not we've got gas and gas pressure, or gas pressure that can only exist with a container that's the necessary antecedent. The point is the sky is claimed to be a vacuum, outer
Okay.
space. And outer space, if it was a vacuum, would mean that all the gas we're breathing would be filling it, and we wouldn't have any gas anymore. It would rapidly expand in all directions to fill the availability of space that it has to fill, as per the second law of thermodynamics. You can't have gas pressure without, you can't have gas pressure without a container.
Yeah, we would still be producing gases at lower level if in this imaginary scenario. You're still going to produce the gases, but there'll be no containment. So off they go into the void because there's no containment. So you wouldn't get a gas pressure because once they've got away from the Earth vector, they're gone. So there's no return to generate the pressure.
For them to press
so it won't be
on.
dynamic
Exactly.
anymore.
There's nothing for them to press upon.
You've still got a gas being released at that point, but it's not going to generate a pressure.
But Adam, where the gas is released, you would say it's coming from containment.
Yeah, but that's
I mean,
his
it's a
whole
surface.
point. You
It's
have
contained
gases
surface.
being released, so you have gas.
Yeah.
You just don't have the
In
pressure.
containment. Yeah, but it
You
has
won't
to
have the
come
gas
from-
There's
there very
nothing to
long
press
because
upon.
you don't have containment.
Yeah.
that's the whole point.
But that's the thing. It comes from an actual surface, which then would be a container wall.
It's come from a container, hasn't it?
Yeah,
It's come from
something
within
to
the cell.
press
So
on.
it's left a container where it had containment and was pressurized, and then you release. And once it's then in the bigger volume, which if it doesn't have containment, it can only go one way, and that's continuous, isn't it? So it wouldn't.
So it still then proves my point. You cannot have any gas without containment because the gas comes from containment.
No, it's still a gas. It's just not generating any pressure anymore because it's continuing in one
Yeah,
way.
but where did the
never
gas
rebound.
come from? Adam, where did the gas come from? Out of thin air?
A chemical reaction.
From a surface, correct?
Well, from a chemical reaction, yeah. It
I
may
have
have
a
been.
philosophical question. I have a- if you
hold
cannot
on.
measure gas, then does it really exist?
Yeah, yes.
I'm
Adam's
starting
point is
to
that
understand.
Oh, really?
factoids
How
and
would
traits.
you know? if
guys,
you can't
hello. Can I
measure
just
it?
take control? Because Adam's made his point twice. I just want to concisely summarise it, especially as it's my point originally. So the gas you could have off gassing, right? The rocks give off a gas, but because it's never hitting anything, it's never developing any pressure. So it's still a gas. It's just not at pressure. Simple.
But if you can never measure it, then how would you be in the know that it is even a gas if there's no way to measure it?
Okay, you've got me there. Look, in this scenario, Arwin, right, okay, in Arwin's scenario, he's asking how, if we are at 10 to the minus 17 torr at sea level because the sky is a vacuum, and a little bit of oxygen happens to be released from wherever, right? How do you know that it's being released? Well, we'd all be dead. None of us would be breathing in this scenario, Arwin.
So all containment required.
That's the more existential consequence of that, of course. But
Yes.
you know, you have to have containment in order to even measure gas pressure, in order to establish that it's actually there. So if there's no containment for the gas to build up pressure in order for us to register that it is there, then how would you ever know that there even is gas?
Indeed.
See, that was my question.
No, I get it. But Adam, unless you want to add anything, Sleeping More is presenting.
I'm done.
Thank you.
Just two things before we go to this clip. When gas pressure or when gas molecules have hit the Earth and they've bounced away from the Earth and all directions are space, what seems to be the argument from their side is that as the gas molecules cool, they lose kinetic energy, and that acts as a brake so that basically it turns the molecules round and comes back to Earth. But that's not true. Now, the reason why I say it's not true is because Newton's first law of motion states that an object in motion will remain in motion unless acted upon by a force. Well, we know gravity is not a force, and we know that kinetic energy reduction or removal of the kinetic energy, which is basically the acceleration, if you take the acceleration away from the molecule, it's not going to slow down. It's going to continue on its path. So if you remove the force that's giving it the energy, like the heat, if you remove the heat from the molecules, that's not going to put the brake on. It's not going to turn the molecules around. It's not going to bring them back to Earth. It's just going to stop them accelerating. So they will maintain their velocity in a spaceward direction unless something turns them around and brings them back to Earth. Now, what that something might be, they need to demonstrate, and we know that it's not even a force because it's an effect. But remember Newton's first law of motion: an object in motion, a gas molecule in motion, will remain in motion unless acted upon by a force. Second point, I'm about to play a little clip here from Professor Dave. Now, it's only a couple of seconds, and I'll tell you what he says before he says it, and then you can hear what he says. He basically says,
Tony, before you just correct a little bit there. You use the words accelerations. When we're talking about gas behavior, there isn't. They've got a constant speed, which is defined by PV equals nRT. So the pressure, the volume, and it's the relative temperature that affects that kinetic energy level. That's done in Kelvin, so you never get to a zero. So you're always going to have a speed. It's never going to get to zero unless you get to 0 degrees Kelvin, absolute zero, which is an impossibility. So they will always have some kinetic energy. If you look at the formula PV equals nRT, there's no acceleration. They may change speed if you add more energy into the system. That'll increase the kinetics, but they're not. It's not acceleration that's related to in gravity accelerations. They just have a speed which is based loosely on the energy levels of the system they're in, which is their energies and all their.
So correct me if I'm wrong here. If the sun excites the molecules to make them travel faster or accelerate, if you remove the sun or the temperature away from the molecule, it's not going to put the brake on. It's just going to remove that excited force that pushes it faster. Right?
No. You missed the intricacy of the detail that was critical. The system that it is in. Can you expand on what you mean by the system that the gas is in, please, Adam?
Yeah, so it's the environment, it's the containment in which
containment. There it is.
Yeah, and it's that particular part of the dynamic system that will, with regard to PV equals nRT, which will define the energy level, the kinetic energy of the molecule and its friends. But say fundamentally, if you use that, then you're using K as a Kelvin rating, so you'll never get to zero. So they're always going to have a level of energy, which is the point of contradiction of I think what you're talking about, the bullet going up and returning to Earth as an analogy for a molecule.
Yeah, you never get 0 Kelvin.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point clear that the removal of any kinetic energy doesn't bring the molecule back to Earth, because it requires a force to bring it back to Earth, according to Newton's first law of motion. But we know that they've not got a force, but they say that they've got the removal of kinetic energy. That's not going to slow it down. It's just it's going to fail. It's just
that's a really good point, Tony, as well. Yeah, if it's continuing up, it's only continuing up and then running out of energy to continuing up. There's no return. They're not saying that suddenly it turns it round. Is it? Because where's the force that turns it round to make it go that way? Then
you've already done it. Adam's already described where they use a false analogy or whatever, the false equivalence. So the bullet, a solid traveling through gas, will run out of what is being described in this example as kinetic energy and then come back down again. Whereas a gas particle doesn't behave like that. It just keeps on going, and if it does hit something, it doesn't gain or lose energy. It has an elastic collision with the walls of the container so that you can make any of these maths work. In other words, to actually qualify all of these things, you've got to have a system to be measuring. Now, Anthony's trying to use this example in a systemless example where you've got a force that creates this collision with the wall of a container to make it change direction. But that doesn't happen. Gas does not do that.
This is when I point out why I claim that when they say gravity, it actually goes against the law of entropy, because they are claiming gravity is overcoming entropy, the increase of entropy.
Precisely. They're claiming a defiance of the law of entropy, a natural law, something that's just being described because it occurs always, with this reification fallacy of gravity, making gas behave in a way it doesn't behave. Sleeping Warrior's been waiting for a while to play this Professor Dave clip. Feel free, you're on screen, it's all queued up, I noticed.
So the point here is that Professor Dave holds himself in a position of self-righteous esteem, right? And because he's a teacher that he calls professor in America, not a university professor, a teacher, he's held up there as high as somebody as magnificent as conspiracy cats, for example. Now, we know that we need collisions with the walls of its container to get pressure. Now, listen to what this gentleman says here when he's dealing with Professor Robitaille. What's Robitaille's first name? Is it? Oh, it's not. I can't remember. Pierre Robitaille. Now, this guy holds a PhD, and he's considered to be one of the world's leading authorities, right? But he's not arguing with a dumb flat earther. But earlier in the conversation, he's compared him to a flat earther. And listen to how he now describes how you get pressure. And I'm going to play. I've played it in a little bit slowly so you can hear it. He literally says you can calculate pressure into existence. Listen to what he says.
inside the sun. When we talk about pressure as being some force applied over an area, it's just any hypothetical area. It doesn't have to be a literal solid surface. We can construct a
So he thinks that you can have a hypothetical area to get pressure. You can just magic pressure into existence just by thinking about it.
No. He's hold on. What he's doing is he's describing how he can calculate hypothetical gas pressure on paper with the abstraction of maths, with the language of maths. Describing it mathematically is absolutely possible without a container. But show it me in reality now, Professor Dave. Show me gas pressure without a container. And feel free to say, oh, well, there's a hypothetical container around it, and then watch how it doesn't contain anything.
Correct.
But even in their maths, they still need a boundary, though. So it's still...
Yeah, they need the boundary, yeah. Now, here's the thing, right? He's not talking with a flat earther like me or Nathan. He's talking to Pierre Robitaille, right? Somebody considered... And at the end of this conversation, I'll show you where it comes from. Basically, Robitaille smacks his bum professionally. He says that he's not helping science by misrepresenting science the way that he does. And he says that he oversimplifies everything to make his points. And I completely agree. But if you do want to see where this video comes from, if you go to his channel, it's Sky Scholar. And you can see the name of it, Pierre-Marie Robitaille debunks Professor Dave. 40 minutes long. The middle segment here, this period here, is absolutely brilliant on this point. So do go away and watch it. It's fantastic, guys.
He double speaks a bit in it. I brought it up a few weeks ago. I think you shared it a couple of weeks ago, Tony, and I brought it up on the show then. It's the point he's smashing Professor Dave on is he's saying, yeah, you can have gas pressure on the Earth without containment because we've got a solid Earth ground that creates a partial pressure and then goes off into fantasy land as to what happens at the top. But he's slapping Professor Dave on that point by saying, but that's an impossibility for stars because they don't have that solid base to even begin the pressure to try to allow gravity to hold it in place afterwards. There's no solid base in the middle. So that's why he's saying that the theory that stars are balls of gas has to be incorrect because you can't generate any gas pressure, unlike you can theoretically.
Hold on. It's not a theory. So again, from the off, if people were a little bit more educated in what is and isn't science, they'd recognise that when he said the theory of stars being gas in a vacuum, not expanding to fill the volume, because of a reification fantasy of gravity, is merely their way of transposing their belief into physical actuality and defying the second law of thermodynamics with just so stories of gravity. Well, does he not realise that the gravity isn't overcoming entropy as pointed out by Flatsoid earlier? Why is he double speaking? I mean, it's your point, Adam, but feel free to carry on.
Let me respond. He's double speaking because he's simply turning a blind eye to the same rules that he's...
Lost you, Anthony.
No.
But don't you think it's amazing that Pierre was very highly acclaimed in things in the scientific... He was even a director at university until he gave his paper against the sun being not a gas. And now he's seen as a joke, apparently, all of a sudden.
Can I jump in?
He dared to go against the rhetoric?
I don't concern myself too much with because exactly. So that's not a shock. Even though who's making that row? Paul. Because he's gone against the rhetoric, suddenly he's being demonised. Yeah, what a shock. That doesn't surprise me in the slightest. But if you've got any sort of gumption about you, you'll look at it in isolation and make your own judgment call based on the evidence that's presented by him. And also pull apart the failings of his claims, as Adam's done. In other words, don't worry about what consensus says. Oh, suddenly he's not a credible source because society says he's disagreeing with society. Well, yeah, that's what happens when you disagree with mainstream rhetoric. You get demonised, and he's going to find it no different. Well, the people who stand up to it change the world we live in.
Well, I find funny that now they're arguing amongst themselves and even comparing each other to flat earthers. So apparently this has been a little bit more significant than they all thought.
But that's the good thing that you've got Professor Dave there kind of calling, like as Chocolate says, kind of referring to Robitaille as retarded as flat earther. But what Robitaille comes back with in their paradigm is to demonstrate that actually it's not him that's got a lack of understanding, that he's exceptionally well qualified, speaks exceptionally well on the subject, and carefully goes through and destroys Professor Dave's argument, demonstrating that he's oversimplified and incorrect and shows a complete lack of understanding and any depth in the fields, and this is why he's wrong. So that's why it's good fun, because you're not in flat earth world. You've just got this idiot that's trying to pretend he can speak the rhetoric of modern science, and when he does, he demonstrates that he doesn't even know that. As Robitaille,
I think that's the best part.
Yeah,
like he's literally getting called out, right? So what you're saying is he's getting called out by his own side off of claims that he's made in trying to rebuttal a flat earther or flat earth claims. Is that basically what's going on right here? Because I didn't watch this, so I don't know. I'm only gathering what your guys is talking about.
Yeah. My perception is same thing happens on our side when a flat earther goes out there and says something that isn't demonstrably provable, but says it anyway, and then we hear about it on this show, and then we say, wait a minute, where'd you get the proof for that? And then we correct them from the position of demonstration or the lack thereof. Now, if we flip it to what's happening here, we got a trench level baller, Professor Dave, doing the same thing, and then one of the upperclassmen, this Pierre fella, comes and says, no, you got it all wrong. This is how it works on the sphere globe. This is how it works in our heliocentric model. And then he corrects him in the proper way, but he's still wrong because he still believes in the heliocentric globe model.
Isn't that funny though? Don't they have a one beautiful unified model, all encompassing?
Well, all they have is a portable tangent plane that they use every time they want to take any kind of real measurement or angles to navigate by, and then they fold up that portable tangent plane and say it's a ball whenever it's needed to.
It's like a folding table.
It's called a datum.
That's perfect.
It's called a datum. Datum.
Perfect. Folding table datum.
Perfectly portable with a handle.
Take it anywhere you like. At the bottom of the globe, at the side of the globe. It works every time.
Paul, I know you were trying to speak. I'm sorry, but go ahead.
I'm just going to try to be a little bit of a defense for the Glovers. But if you think about the formula for gas pressure, it would only measure an instant in time, a perfect moment. Like you can't measure. If you wanted to put it outside a container, you have to put time in the equation because of entropy, it's a function of time. So yeah, you can say at this instant there's pressure here. But because there's no containment over time, that pressure would dissipate. So that's what they should be saying. So any measurement they give, they say, well, I can measure a volume of air pressure, even though there's no containment, but there's a function of time involved. Over time, that will dissipate. So that's the only argument I want to make. That's what they should be saying.
Yes, you're correct. Well, when they try and attempt to show that in physicality, they'll show gas pressure without a container in a container having come from a second container. And they'll show that with an opening in the container, it doesn't immediately dissipate. And as Paul points out, well, the entropy increase based on the limited exposure to the outside air will mean that it will still expand in all directions to fill the availability of volume, but it'll take longer because it's got a small opening to get through. So therefore, proportional to time has to be taken into consideration. Response from QE when Hillbilly Blue Balls, the redneck retard, first presented gas pressure without a container in two containers was to say, yeah, come back a day later. Do you think the butane's still going to be in your pipe? No. It's proportional to time. Entropy increase will still take place.
I don't think they're being, certainly in that calculation, I don't think they're being that genuine. You look at what Robitaille was saying there. He's saying you can calculate it based on a theoretical thing, and what they're basically doing they're pre-assuming that containment magically happens, and they're going into the world of their presumptions, going to a particular depth level of the sun, making another presumption and making a statement that the sun is this dense in gas, at this point, and then from that statement, back calculating the pressure based on the pre-assumption already that there's X amount of molecules in this amount of space. That's all they're doing. They're saying at this layer of the sun, the density is this of it, and this means the pressure must be this. And it must be this because we know it's a ball of gas. It's all presumptive based on that. They're not actually measuring any pressure. They're just pretending they know what the concentration of the molecules is at a certain level and then calculating it based on that. That's just bunkum, isn't it?
Yeah. But the main overriding aspect to this is the containment. And it was summarised by the clip that Sleeping Warrior played from Professor Dave. Well, we can create a hypothetical chamber for the gas to be in. Well, no, because hypothetical chambers don't contain gas. In reality.
So Adam,
Hypothetically, in a hypothetical world, they would contain the gas.
Yeah, on paper, in maths, you can calculate it based on a hypothetical container. And you can say, well, the hypothetical container in my example doesn't have any walls. I'm just going to take an area, a size of amount of volume, and say it doesn't have containment. But I'm only going to calculate what happens within that specific area, even though in reality, if I had a specific area with gas in it, it would just expand in all directions to fill the availability of the container it was in. But hypothetically, I can ignore that.
But volume, you cannot have volume without containment, so that would be a contradiction anyway.
Exactly. So you're going to have a hypothetical volume. Well, in reality, you can't have hypothetical volumes without containment.
There's always one part in the conversation where they all revert back to like pictures from space or whatever, looking down, and they always say, well, why does all the gas seem to pool at the bottom? And my answer to that is, it's just like looking into the tank of sulfur hexafluoride where it's all based on the floor. It's got to be inside a tank though, on it, and it's got to be sealed. So essentially, like, they always infer that gravity's pulling the gas pressure back down, and completely ignore the fact that you can also interpret that to be looking into the sulfur hexafluoride tank, but you can just see it, whereas you can't see it in the sulfur hexafluoride without the little boat on it. So they can't see the other argument. They can only see gravity, but they can't see the fact that there is an alternative explanation for it.
Can you restart your desk? Do you have to do that?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's something going with your mic. I don't know what it is. It sounds distorted. Anyway, any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
P waves and S wave diagrams, isn't it?
You tell me.
But they've all been disproven.
What are they?
Every step of the way. So it's only a theory that actually works or yields some kind of proof.
Isn't it amazing?
Colloquial theory.
Enough.
Would it be a scientific theory, would it?
No, a colloquial theory.
Wouldn't it be amazing that nobody can go past 12 kilometers, not under the sea, not under the ground, nowhere? It's like it has some kind of limitation.
Well, limitations so far have only been derived from just the inability to go deeper and all that. So the Mariana Trench, I think, is the deepest thing out there. And yeah, I don't think they've really tested I don't think they've drilled the bottom at the Mariana Trench or anything. So
we don't know, do we? But I think limitation implies something. I think it's as far as we've been is 12 kilometers. Now they might have had troubles, but just because a drill bit down an hole, let's say a couple of inches wide, gets stuck, to me doesn't necessarily mean you can use the word limitation. I don't know. It's as far as we've got, is what I'd say.
Yeah, tungsten carbide's limitations is at 12k. It can't cut any deeper. It's too hard for whatever reason on that particular location. So you're talking about the entire world versus what, a 4-inch borehole? And based on that, you're going to say that, oh, well, that's as far as we can go. Well, we don't know. But we don't know, as opposed to molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth.
Well, based on our technology, it's limited.
Yeah, well, like with most things.
In that hole at that particular spot, foot wider, it might go further. You don't know. They didn't try.
Exactly. Hole to hell, they call it.
Well, I think if their predictions didn't work, going just about 8 miles, I think they definitely were going about 4,000. Yeah, seems legit.
Oh, well, you can extrapolate.
Yeah, I mean, just carry the one and everything is good.
Right.
Even then, I say
so
that.
it's actually the hydrogen mud core.
I was just going to say, you can't really extrapolate. How do you extrapolate from digging down and failing to get any further to self-perpetuating molten iron core? You can't extrapolate out to that.
I figured out why they can't. I figured out why they can't go deeper.
That's what I was going to get at, Flatter. The only thing that's interesting with that for me, and at the point of curiosity, is that we've not bothered anymore in any way. Nobody else has bothered. Why stop? Why stop trying? So it would seem a very easy thing to continue doing in multiple sites, but there's nothing more. Stopped.
Yeah, like where's the 10-mile hole? And then the 15-mile hole, like progress, guys. Oh, maybe we destroyed that technology. It's a painful process to bring it back.
It's too painful.
If they claim, like the Foucault pendulum has precession because Earth rotates underneath, if you're going to stick a drill bit so deep in the hole for how many hours, don't you think the Earth would be hitting against it?
Say that again.
They claim that precession happens because of the Earth rotation, like the Foucault pendulum. Now, if you're putting a drill bit down a long hole for many, many hours, wouldn't it also be showing for precession then?
No, you're attached to the non-inertial reference frame. Even in their example, it would make no difference.
Like drilling an hole through the roundabout as you're spinning, isn't it? You're fine.
Well, unless you go through the bottom of the roundabout and reach something that isn't spinning, but that isn't what they're suggesting. So, no, sorry, Flatzoid.
Any Globers in Discord?
Hey, the Globers in Discord will only give a 2-bit answer to this question.
Here we go.
Yes, Tent, you your blunt answer again.
You're very sharp today.
I have a day off, Adam.
Sharp as tungsten. Any evidence of the R value? Go ahead, Chris.
Maybe.
Yeah, did you want to add something?
No. I was going to add a pun, but you cut me off, so.
Oh, no, feel free.
It's late now. It's too late. I was going to say 10th is like a drill sergeant.
Boom, boom. Well worth it. Thank you.
Sergeant. Ooh.
I take that as corporal punishment.
Terrible. It's ruined.
You can't ever ignore the puns, dude, because it's the only thing that's keeping our minds sharp, because the ballers don't anymore.
I like the sharp one, Adam. You used it twice very well.
But that is something
to be honest, some of 10th man's puns are actually harder to figure out than the baller's arguments.
Sometimes.
Screwing around, guys.
We did discuss this on yesterday's show. That was something we did discuss. So, as a consequence of there being very limited argumentation to have to overcome on the globe side, we're having internal discussions currently, which I discussed this with Wits It Gets It actually in yesterday's Uncut and After show, the brand new show that went out on my second channel yesterday. And Bob Nodell and Wits It were both in there. And both me and Witsit were both of the same mind, which is try and keep these animals off each other. Nevertheless, it was pointed out that this is progress. It's basically us discussing amongst ourselves, where till now there's never an opportunity to do it. There's always something to discuss. There's always some bullshit claim that we've got to actually overcome or discuss or detail or whatever. Whereas where in the last 5 years have we been in the privileged position to just chat amongst ourselves without any concern whatsoever that there's some more important underlying claim that the Western world's suddenly been exposed to that needs to be debunked? It's just not the case in 2020, right? The argument in the first point, which is the Earth curve is the horizon, is dead. So here we are in the trenches, sat around having a brew, chatting amongst ourselves. It's ace. I couldn't be more happy.
Well,
if I'm honest.
Nathan, if the globe is in, do you think we ever get any answers anywhere? I mean, look at the conversation we've had. We've gone into more detail with just gas pressure alone, just with this in a half an hour than a year's worth of globers talking.
Yeah, but talking drill bits is less boring than talking to these ballers.
Boring.
Absolutely
Boring.
marvelous, that one. Absolutely.
You hammered that one.
Well, I guess there's no evidence of the R value. I take it.
Nah, bro. It's 2020.
Definitely no.
They don't got R. They don't got physicality to their horizon. As a matter of fact, did you hear Tim Osman claim? Nobody claims the horizon is Earth curvature. Did you hear that one?
I think the Flat Earth Awards at the end of the year should give Adam Meekin the hole-in-one award.
Say again, Chris.
Yeah, Chocolate, I heard you say that, but they still act like they have a winning argument.
Say again, Chris. Go ahead.
No, I was just answering Chocolate's question. Yeah, I heard the Tim Osman thing. I think I heard it live too, but I really re-listened to it at least twice. Is so funny, and to say that Globers have never claimed that the horizon is Earth curve is insanity. We have 3 or 4 years of clips of them saying that, and they've only recently changed it because of the Black Swan, which Tim was trying to say wasn't even a big deal. So he didn't even realize he was debunking himself with the thing he was saying wasn't a big deal. It was ironic and hilarious.
Tim himself
3 or
has
4
4
years of clips at the same time that he's declaring that he's posting pictures like, look, I got Earth curve in my horizon pictures.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Is I was biting my lip listening because no one specifically asked him, or maybe you did. I missed it or I forgot. Well, Tim, in that picture, what is blocking the bottom of the buildings in your photo? You're trying, if it's not.
I definitely did ask him that. I'm just going to read out a quick chat comment from Sage1123. It says, I recall an old joke. There's an old farmer talking to his son. The farmer asked what his son learned at the fancy school that the farmer was paying for. Farmer's son replied, he learnt pi r squared. The farmer then smacked his son on the back of the head and said, you are stupid, son. Pies are round, not square. Thanks, Sage123.
I have a gravity question.
Just before you get on,
hold on, Flaxoid. Go ahead, Chris. What's your gravity question?
Well, is Anthony here still?
Yeah, Anthony's here.
Yeah, I'm here.
So when you did your experiment, I mean, I guess let me ask you this way: what's the relationship between density and buoyancy? Because people are always claiming it's density, the change in value of density, but I think we all agree density isn't a force, but we all agree buoyancy is. So why can't we simply say if the force of the buoyant force is strong enough, you'll get an upward vector, and if it's too weak, you'll get a downward vector? Why isn't it that simple?
Okay, so first off, the word buoyancy relies on gravity being a force in their model, and we know that gravity is not a force. So that means buoyancy within their model can no longer work. So we need another way of describing it because we know gravity is not a force, right? If you claim that density itself is not a force, I agree. However, when you have two densities competing for the same space, trying to occupy the same space, one will give way to the other. And that's demonstrable. We can repeat it very easily by repeating my egg test. You've got the egg and you've got the water, and they're competing for the same contained space within the glass. Now, one of them has to give way. And at the beginning, the egg's on the floor. Add a bit of salt to it. You can lift it off the floor because you're changing the density of the layer around it. But because we can't call that buoyancy because that relies on gravity being a force, it means that we've got to call it something else. So we coined the phrase relative density because you've got two densities next to each other competing for the same space, and one of them will give way. And we know the cause of that giving way, that process, is mass. Adding the mass changes the relative density of the liquid, so the egg is displaced. That's what happens. Now, the argument against it is, well, it's just density buoyancy. And it's not. That's a complete misrepresentation, because if it's as simple as density and buoyancy, you're inferring that gravity is a force. So it can't be density buoyancy. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. That's a good answer. I guess I forgot that they had little g in there. But again, little g is sort of strange, right? Because you can sort of swap it out for sometimes weight or acceleration. So this says the buoyancy force, buoyant force equals fluid density times acceleration. So it says acceleration due to gravity.
Yeah.
So can you swap it out and just say acceleration or weight?
That's what they mean when they say weight. They mean gravity.
The two cancel out within the buoyancy stuff, don't they, the G's anyway? So they are just demonstrating a differential and comparison in the relative densities. It's kind of what it's doing. Because both the water and the egg are multiplied by 9.8. So they just...
So they work it on a constant then?
Yeah, net force zero.
Dig into it. But as far as I thought it cancelled out. But I could be wrong. But I thought it was a kind of in and out equation, and it just then looks at the differentials in the densities.
That's correct. When it's at equilibrium, they say it's net force zero. Yeah, basically, you're right.
So then ultimately, Anthony, I mean, in your opinion, so that either means density is a force or something, you know, what's the explanation for how you got the egg to move if you're saying it is density, a change in density?
Density is not a force. Density disequilibrium, right? For it to be in disequilibrium means a force has been applied to it already, it doesn't matter, to take it out of disequilibrium. Now, the system itself will want to return back to that equilibrium, even though you've put in some false energy to take it out of that equilibrium. That's why it's in density disequilibrium.
I'd describe it. What you're saying there is if you're keeping everything else the same and you're putting it back to the position it was in before. If his question was if density is not a force, density itself isn't. Density is just a measurement. But like I said, when you've got two things that are competing for the same space inside a cup, for example, there's going to be a displacement because me and Nathan stood on the same spot. We can't occupy that same space. So one of us is going to move. Now, because one of us is moving, that relative density value is one of us starts to move. That means there's disequilibrium because it's caused by something, right? And that disequilibrium causes an acceleration, and I demonstrated that. But density alone isn't a force, but relative density and disequilibrium causes an acceleration.
Yeah, think of it as an entropic property.
Yeah, that's why your egg was just floating in the water, right? And then you added salt to it, increasing the density of it. Now you've got two different densities trying to clash with each other. And what has to happen? The lighter, the object in the denser medium goes up.
Perfect. With that, I'll say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching on a Premiering stream, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!